Hi, I'm Ann from KnitSpot and Bare Naked Wools, and I have a new tutorial for you today to show you how to block blanket squares for your blanket statement piece. I'm here with Erica. She's going to be helping me out. Again, this is her first time blocking something. She's doing all kinds of new stuff today. One of the reasons that there are many reasons to block your blanket squares, but for starters, you may have already noticed and maybe even gotten a little nervous about the fact that your squares or your blocks are not the same size. They're not the same length or width, and it's kind of making you nervous. For instance, we have two blocks here that David knit for his blanket, and one is very long and skinny, and the other one is shorter and kind of fat. And this is due to the fact that different stitch combinations do different things. Any pattern that has a vertical rib of any kind is going to want to elongate and pull inward. And fabrics that are garter based are going to want to push horizontally outward and contract vertically. And it just takes a little bit of encouragement and blocking to get them to be the same size. For instance, we do have some squares that have been blocked, and of all different types of stitches, and you can see here that they have been able to be blocked completely to the same size so that they're all uniform. And doing so will make it much easier for you to put your blanket together when that time comes. Now, to get started, you'll need a few tools, not very many, and they are simple, and you can use them for many projects. So some of these will be a worthy investment on your part, or you can share the cost with a friend. One thing that's always nice to have is blocking squares or a blocking board, some kind of surface to block on. If you have a nice big wool rug with a pad underneath and you can throw a sheet over it, that makes a great blocking surface too. The top of a spare bed is another good blocking surface. What I've got here are blocking squares. They're foam, and they snap together and apart, and they have kind of a textured surface, and that's, you know, some of them are like that, some of them are smooth. It doesn't really matter. You can also buy bigger squares in construction departments or home stores, bigger foam squares that are used for flooring, and as long as they're brand new and clean, those are fine. I like to put a towel down on top of my blocking surface when I work. So I've got some spare towels here, one for Erica and one for me. We'll just cover the whole surface with the towel. And then I've got some pins. There are many different kinds of pins. The heavy T-pins that are often sold for blocking are not the greatest idea. They're very heavy. They often have burrs on the end, and they tend to tear at the yarn. So I don't recommend that type. Just in general, they're not as good as, I like these. Are inexpensive and easy to find. They're quilting pins. They have an extra long shank, and the tip at the top, they have a little colorful plastic end that make them easy to work with, and they're easy on your fingers as well. And the thinness of the wire in these pins makes them easy to go in and out of blocking materials. You might bend a couple here and there, but you can always, they're so expensive that they can be thrown away. So this is my sort of go-to pin for this type of thing. But you can use whatever you like best. A good ruler is another tool that you're going to need. I like the type that is called a see-through ruler. Again, you can find this in quilting department or in a graphic design department at the art store. It has increments of 1 inch that are further divided into smaller increments in a square grid shape. So it makes it really easy to level your pieces and square them off. Okay, so now we have washed and rolled out our blanket blocks and squeezed all the water out, and now we're ready to begin pinning them out to size. For this step, you just need to know the measurements that you're trying to achieve in your blanket block. For the Blanket Statement Club blanket, the blocks are supposed to be a final size of 7 inches wide and 9 inches long. So why don't you go ahead and bring your block over. We'll do ours together. Okay, we're going to have to share the ruler, but that's okay. And the pins. Thank you. I'll share with you. Now one thing, going back to the unwashed squares for just a minute, one thing with your squares that you want to avoid is having the bind off and the cast on edge be too tight. You want those to remain very stretchy, and it is here in the blocking that you're going to find out how important that is. Because if you can't stretch that edge to the size it's supposed to be, your whole square is going to be limited to the width of that stable edge. So here we've got edges that are pretty stretchy. They can at least stretch out. This edge is a little stretchier than that one. The side edges are never a worry. They're usually pretty stretchy. Okay, so what I like to do is set up my ruler at the center and put a pin just at the center of my square, or maybe even 2 pins, depending on if I have to stretch or not. And then measure out the length that it's supposed to be. Now, these blocks are supposed to be blocked to 7 inches wide and 9 inches long. David is using a slightly heavier yarn and larger needle with his blocks, so his are going to be a little bit bigger. As long as you can block all of your blocks to the same size, you should be fine. So let's see. So we're going to go with, for his blocks, 10 inches long and 8 inches wide. Your mileage may vary. Your blocks may be even bigger, or they might be quite a bit smaller. The blocks I was showing you before that were all exactly the same size actually are the size of the blanket statement requirement. 7 inches wide by 9 inches long. So I measured out the length of my square. I put 2 pins in my starting place. And then I want to get this so that it's 10 inches. David is using a size 8 needle, so his blocks are going to be a little bit bigger than some people's blocks. Okay. Now, if you have to actually make your block a little smaller, you can just push the fabric in. It shouldn't have to be too much. Just kind of encourage it in a little bit. Sometimes when fabric is wet, it wants to grow all out of proportion, and if you squeeze it in, you'll even see as it dries, it'll shrink up into that space. Now with items like sweaters and garments that are going to wear and hang, that doesn't, it's not really possible to make an item a size smaller by blocking it. But for an item like this, where we just want to get it all to the same size pushed in, and then it's going to receive a border of crochet, which is very stable, and then it's going to be sewn to many other pieces. All right, so once I have my length pinned out in the middle of the square, I'm going to pin out my width. So I'm going to pin it to 8 inches. I'm going to put 2 pins here, and then, there you go, I'm going to push in a little bit. Now how about you? Now you're going to need, she's going to need to stretch hers a little bit. So what you want to do here, Erica needs for hers to be a little bit wider. You know it needs to be 8 inches. So set the 4-inch mark pretty much at the center and pull on each side to get to that 8 inches. So I'm going to push mine in a little bit, and she's going to be pulling hers out a little bit. And then once you have this cross pinned out, lengthwise and widthwise, you can just work each quadrant into place with pins. I always pin at an angle kind of against the fabric, especially if you're stretching something. This will give you some leverage. So I just want to make sure that at the ends I have the same width as in the middle, and I do. And then whenever I finish pinning something, I usually stand back and just eyeball it to, you know, make sure it looks square everywhere. And if it doesn't look square, I take my ruler and measure it out to see if am I crazy, or am I really seeing that it's off in that spot? It's amazing, sometimes even a 1/4 inch will make a difference to your eye. Especially in something that's very rectangular or square like these blocks are. You can hide inconsistencies in a shawl or something lacy with texture. I just smooth it out. I like to make sure now, once I have it all pinned down, that all my verticals are kind of running that they're not, you know, moving back and forth. And the same thing with the horizontals. I can already see the halo rising up on this fabric. It's so pretty. That's the clean fiber released from the oil, released from the yarn, and you know, in the process of encouraging it, it blooms, and this beautiful halo of alpaca, clean alpaca, comes rising up off the surface and catches the light. It's so pretty. And look, her piece that was so long and skinny, now it's equal to this one. It looks really nice. It looks really nice. So of course you can fuss over this, you know, kind of unendingly, but for now it's good to get just as close as possible. Once you get your crochet edge on and you have that all done, you're probably going to want to steam these again, and then you can use steam blocking to set the size definitely and finish it off completely before sewing together. And we'll be showing you that in the final set of tutorials that we'll do next month. Now, one thing about blocking that's a good idea, even though you might be tempted to do them one at a time, it's fine to do one just to get an idea, or if you're really worried about a particular one, go ahead and block it. But with the blocks and the strips, it's a good idea to do them in groups. For instance, if you've only got 4 strips, it's a good idea to do them all at once, so that what you can actually do even is stack a couple on top of each other, and you can do that with your blocks too. Once you get most of the water squeezed out, and especially in dry weather, you can stack them up, you know, 2 or 3, and that makes it a little bit easier to make sure that they're all the same size. All right, that looks great, Erica.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next step is to let these squares dry. Again, you can even go back and push at them a little bit as they dry, just to make sure that they stay and keep their shape. After that, if you haven't woven in your ends yet, that would be the time to do it. And then you can move on to our 3rd tutorial with Laura, who's going to show you how to do a single crochet edge around each of your squares. For more information about our Blanket Statement Club or the yarns used in this tutorial, please visit our website by clicking the link below. Thank you for joining us.